thrust to reduce Grenada's carbon footprint. We are trying to encourage everyone, all Grenadians, to use renewable energy, and we are here to speak to you about the launch of two exciting programs. Renewable energy, as you may know, is referred to as clean energy, and it comes from natural resources, for example, the sunlight and the wind. Before we move on to talk about our programs, I know some of our viewers are wondering who or what is the PURC. The PURC was established by the PURC Act number 20 of 2016, and we are an independent entity which is responsible for public utilities. Presently, we are regulating Grenlec, and at any time, the minister responsible for public utilities, following due process, of course, could call upon us and ask us to look into any other public utility provider. Some of our functions include: we set, initiate, and conduct reviews of tariffs charged by the public utility. We provide an enabling environment for sustainable and secure electricity. We investigate complaints made by consumers against the public utility, and we hear and resolve any disputes between public utilities and consumers or other persons. We also have many other functions which we will continue to speak to the public about as we engage with members of the media from time to time. Now I'm going to turn you over to our head table. We have our CEO, Dr. George Matthew, and our engineer, Mr. Davrel Bola, who will now speak to you about the launch of our two programs.
Thank you, Ms. Phillip. Good morning to the listening public, all Grenadians. Whether you are local in Grenada or on the World Wide Web or listening on any of the social media platforms. Now, today we are very excited and encouraged to be able to bring to the public and at large in Grenada and also outside of Grenada information about the two key programs that we're looking to launch for ensuring that the renewable energy penetration in Grenada becomes one of a very much of a larger scale. Now, I'm just going to give you an overview of where exactly we sit as a regulatory body. Now, the regulations are the rules and directives that guides the sector. And in order for you to have those rules and directives, there must be a legislative overarching view. Now, that legislative overarching view is the Electricity Sector Act, Electricity Act of 2016. We also have the PURC Act, which embodied the Commission. And above this, we have the policy orientation in which we are guided by. Now, the main policy objectives of Grenada is to have sustainable, affordable, and secure electricity going into the future. And we are mandated to ensure that there is that drive to give you that sustainable, secure, and affordable electricity supply. Now, today we're mainly focused on launching the self-generator program and also give you some details about the small-scale IPP program, which will be launched within the next month. I'm going to hand you over to our engineer, Mr. Bola, who is going to give you some details on both programs, and then we can engage in some questions.
So, pleasant good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So, I'd just like to start by saying that the self-generator program has been prepared taking into consideration specific requirements established in the Electricity Act 19 of 2016 and amended in 2017. Just a few pointers. So I'd just like to state straight off the bat that the new self-generator program is going to be net metered, and all the eligibility criteria, including energy sources and technology used for the generation of electricity, is what's being considered. I'll also speak a bit on the duration of the program and the maximum generation capacity to be installed for each self-generator and the cumulative generation capacity under the program itself. Now, the legislation would mentioned that the definition for a self-generator is someone who generates energy specifically for their own use, and then in the event that they produce an excess energy, would then have that opportunity to sell to the grid. So the self-generator program is going to be based on your consumption, and the sizing of a self-generator for residential usage is going to be 120% of that consumption. So in essence, your systems would be sized 1.2 times your average annual consumption. Now, the duration of the program is going to be for 12 months, so we're asking that those people who want to participate in that program, when they sign up to that program, you have within now and the next 12 months to do so. Those signing in and having the permit who should have the systems installed within the next 12 months. We're looking at a cap, so an accumulative cap of 1 megawatt. So essentially, we're saying that for all the people participating in that program, all your systems, the sizes put together, should get to a 1 megawatt cap capacity. Regarding electricity generation, so one of the reasons we're having a pilot program, and just let me clarify that saying that there's a cap of 1 megawatt doesn't mean that as soon as we get to 1 megawatt, that's the end of self-generation for the country. It's going to be a program. The first instance of market sounding is to gauge interest, not so much capability in that sense. So we're inviting people from the general public who may not even have the technical knowledge of what an installed system would be like, to call the office to ask questions, because what we're doing right now is reaching to the public to say there is an opportunity for you to participate in such a program. After that, a part of the motive or the intention of this program is to gauge technical and financial impact. So we'll be doing an ongoing assessment during these 12 months. We'll be looking at the way all these small systems interact with the grid, what needs to be changed technically regarding the opportunities to finance such projects. We will also be looking at how many people are coming on. Is there interest? Are there barriers to them getting into this program? What are they? We'll be doing a complete assessment. And obviously there is a part of contract management. So with your interconnection agreement, there will be obvious clauses that you need to comply with. We will be doing an ongoing assessment of our contract conditions. We know that obviously there are also people who would be looking at different clauses and different ways that it can be twisted, and all those things would be considered. And during that 12-month period, there would always be a process of continuous improvement. So we'll always be looking, modify, update, to make the program as seamless as possible. And that's one of the big motivating drives, to have a pilot program and cap it at 1 megawatt. I can go on to the small scale IPPs. So SG, self-generators, speaks to people who are going to be doing a system for their own use and then selling the excess. So it's implicit in net metering, which implies you're going to first use what you produce, so you offset that portion of the bill that you would have been paying previously, and then you get to sell your excess to the grid. Now there's another program that we'll be launching quite soon, the small scale IPP, independent power producer. So the market for electrical generation has been open. So you get one player being the self-generator. You also get the other player, the IPP, and in this case, this specific program, the small-scale IPP, where you'll be able to produce energy with the intention just to sell. So you're essentially an investor. And small scale just means that you wouldn't be in the large industrial scale in the megawatt brackets, which would go into other areas that we may not mention right now. But essentially, we're saying that people who are willing to invest in the energy market, people who are interested in doing systems in the 80, 100, 150, maybe 200 kilowatt power scale, can participate in this program where they would do a system, and then all the energy that they would generate from that system, they can sell to the utility at a feed-in tariff. That system, more details will be provided as the month goes on, because we're launching on the 12th of May. But essentially, you would need to be a bit more robust. You would have to present a business plan. You would have to show technical and financial viability. But it is one of the programs that we get in where we look to offset the energy produced by fuel and get a bit greener, get a higher renewable energy penetration into the system.
If I can add some more perspective to what Mr. Bola was saying, what is happening with those two programs is that the PRC has mandated to be the manager for the sector, the electricity sector in Grenada, is endowed with providing that enabling environment to have all our local persons to be a key or integral part of the sector. So we have the self-generator program, which is going to give persons an opportunity to install their solar panels on their roofs so that you can use that electricity that is generated, and any excess that you have, you can sell it to the utility. What happens what key to that concept is that you're going to be reducing instantaneously your bill. Your electricity bill would now be reduced because, assuming that you're using 5 kilowatt hours in a day and you generate 2 every day from your solar panels, you now no longer have to pay for the 2. It is in that investment cost that you would have put to put the panels on your roof. So that enabling environment to get our everyday Grenadian, the normal persons, everyone from all and sundry, to be able to be a part of the sector. Then we have this wider arching perspective in which Grenadians who also want to be investors in the sector, in which you now want to get a return on your capital that you would have put down. So you want to install a larger size system, and with that larger size system, then you can get your appropriate return on your investment as mandated by that investment that you give. Now, you may ask, how does GrenLec tie into this? Now, GrenLec, within the model, the regulatory framework that we have, the regime, GrenLec we have what is called a single buyer model, in which GrenLec would be the network licensee, and they will be able to buy all that electricity that comes from the self-generators and from the independent power producers, and they're going to sell that on to the consumers. So GrenLec would not be disadvantaged in any way, and the regulatory mechanisms that we have in place would ensure that GrenLec is not disadvantaged. As a key utility within the sector, we're going to have what is referred to as competition for the market, in which we will capture lower prices for the electricity that's injected into the system that consumers would buy. And over time, we're going to shift to a place where we have more renewables and a lower cost, sustainable cost for electricity being injected into the system. So I just wanted to put this perspective there as we are about to take some of the questions on the program.
Members from the media who are joining us via Zoom, you can now ask your questions. We have GBN.
Yeah. This is Gerard Joseph from GBN. My first question, for the self-generators, what is the initial cost for these private individuals, and how do they go about really benefiting from this in terms of would they have to cover the cost of installation or the initial cost of the equipment themselves?
Yes. So, thanks and thank you for your question. So just let me read this sentence out to you, and then I elaborate. So the Electricity Act of 2016 introduces the requirement to obligate the self-generator to obtain a permit, and that would also go to people who were previously interconnected with Grenlec. They would now have to register with the PURC because there are certain differences within the program as it was before and now. Now, specific to the point you made, renewables always comes with an upfront investment, which is amortized over time. And one of the benefits of this program is that you would be not only contributing to lessening the fossil footprint in the country and in the world in general, but you would be able to generate your own green energy, and then you would have offset cost from what you would have been paying before. So that's one of the benefits. When it comes to who would be bearing the cost, installed kilowatt power, and I'm going to speak specific to units here, so then you can do the math for other systems, also considering economies of scale. So the bigger the system, the more economical it would be. In Grenada right now, an installed kilowatt power is 4,000 to 5,000 EC dollars. That investment cost would have to be borne by the person who is interested in getting involved in such a program. But I would reiterate that since you're getting to offset your electricity bill by first consuming, then selling your excess, the system essentially, and I'm going to go very cliche here, it pays for itself.
Thank you, Mr. Bowler. We now have a question from the Grenadian Voice.
Given the size of the investment up front, has PERC had any discussions with financial institutions to create packages that would make it easier for people that do not have that amount of money to invest at this moment? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nancy, for your question. So the PRC, we're up to the task. So what we have done is that we have preliminary engaged financial institutions to make them fully aware of the intrinsic aspects around what it is when it comes to financing those types of systems. We are scheduled to have further conversations with the wider financing institutions, so microfinancing institutions, the banks, the credit unions, etc. And what we want to ensure in that conversation is that these financial institutions and entities are pretty much aware that this is a secure mechanism for generating electricity. It's going to add to the sustainability of Grenada. It's going to help us in achieving our climate objectives, etc. So that if someone cannot come up with the $4,000 or $5,000 right now to install their 1.2 kilowatt system or 1 kilowatt system, which is the numbers that we are calling, is because of our analysis that we've done initially, in which we look at the average household in Grenada and saw that the consumption is around 150 kilowatt hours. And if we size that system appropriately, you're going to have a 1.2 kilowatt system, which on average from our initial analysis shows that you need $4,000 to $5,000. So we are engaging them to ensure that the appropriate debt financing is there. So instead of someone having to put up 1,000 out of the 5,000, you can actually have that full coverage of your debt. The rates that is being paid, etc., the term of the rates, the loan term, length of the loans, etc. So we are engaging the financial institutions to make sure that they are on board in terms of ensuring that Grenadians are able to take part in this program. We have also gone past just the financial institution. We've met with the initial, what I would refer to as a timestamp number of installers who are already existing in the sector before the PRC actually came fully embodied. And we have engaged them, these installers, and we're hoping to continue the conversations with the wider stakeholder groups around concessions and making sure that we have the appropriate supply chain so that we can reduce the combined cost or the total cost that the system would come to as for installation. So to answer your question specific, yes, we have engaged financial institutions, and we continue to engage the wider stakeholders along that area.
Nancy, do you have any follow-up questions? Okay, we will move on to Ms. Nisha Paul. You have a question?
Yes, good morning, everyone. How many persons are we targeting under the program? And will the opportunity also be extended to businesses, or will it only be for private individuals? And can you elaborate a bit on the expectations for after the 12-month program culminates? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, very good question as well. The program has an accumulated cap of 1 megawatt. If you get quite a few of those small systems up for residential, we're looking into the hundreds. So let's just throw out a figure there. Let's say we get some systems going up on average 1.5, 1.8 kilowatt power. Some of them could be less where it comes to, because it's all based on your consumption. In that case, you would have maybe, before you get to that cap, somewhere in the region of 600 to 700 participants who can participate under that umbrella, under that cap. And no, it's not only limited to residential. You can get people who are non-residential participating, but then your limit regarding the percentage of your consumption would be limited to 60%. So somebody who's residential, their production capacity would be capped at 1.2 times their consumption or their generation capacity. For non-residential, that generation would be capped at 60%. The second part of your question, could I just get it again?
That would be, what are the expectations for the conclusion of the program?
Oh, okay. So we're not going to jump all in at this all at once, because we understand that when the electricity grid in Grenada was developed, I think in a lot of places in the world as well, to be honest, the expectation or the vision of going so high in renewables wasn't envisioned. So we want to cap at 1 megawatt, having these participants, and actually analyze the system. We want to look at what's happening, what we can change, because it's not going to be perfect from the word go. And we have to do a process of continuous improvement. We have to keep our ears open. We have to collect feedback, and we also have to analyze technical data. So we'll be getting feedback from the people participating. We'll be getting feedback from Grenlec. We'll be getting feedback from the financial institutions. There are a lot of different players, the insurance companies. I mean, there's so many different players in this, and the PRC has a role described as caught in the middle, because we have to regulate and we have to do a balancing act between all those different factors. So there's so many things that we need to analyze that we cannot let it pass a particular percentage of penetration without looking at what could be changed and what could be improved before we go forward. And the intention obviously is to get a higher level of penetration, because we're not just thinking generation expansion, we're thinking about replacement. We're thinking about replacing our fossil fuels with renewables, but we also have to remember that it's new territory for us, and that renewables, especially solar, is quite intermittent. So we want to see all the impact that can have, and we want to get it right.
Nisha, any other questions? Okay, as you know, we are broadcasting live on Facebook, and we have some questions coming in from persons. One of the questions is, what are some of the natural resources which are available in Grenada that you would advise persons to harness renewable energy from?
Thank you very much for the question. So there was an initial layer of information given on this previously, but in Grenada we are endowed with lots of sunlight. So you have solar, so you have PV systems. There are different ways in which you can do solar in Grenada. You can have the rooftop solar, you can have the solar farms, you can actually have concentrated thermal solar also. In the initial bit, we're thinking that in Grenada we're going to harness lots of rooftop solar and also the solar farms. There is wind. There is still some analysis that needs to be done, appropriate studies to see how much wind we can harness. It can be onshore wind, but whether or not we want to see the wind turbines up there, because we are a touristic country, we can have offshore wind. There is tidal. There is something called ocean tech, in which you harness the difference in temperature from the ocean. So you're looking at the lower cool temperature and the higher warm temperature, and then you get the difference, and you can harness that technology. Then there is a biomass. So we have lots of opportunities in Grenada. We have geothermal, which is referred to as in the electricity sector as being a base load type renewable, so it's not very intermittent. You can have it at a very stable 76% availability factor, 76 to 80%. So there are lots of resources that we are endowed with in Grenada that we can actually harness.
Another question which is coming in, and it goes, which program is more affordable for Grenadians, particularly low-income earners, to become involved in?
So if I'm to chime in here first, now I would say that as a low-income earning Grenadian, you're concerned that your electricity bill might be a little bit high. You refer to this as your fuel poverty measure, your indicator, whether or not you're very close there to that fuel poverty mechanism or electricity poverty. If you can have that opportunity now, and I think that every Grenadian or sundry should try to grapple at that opportunity, to which you can reduce your electricity bill and not be tied into the fluctuating higher cost of electricity that's been generated from fossil fuel, where you can generate your electricity on your roof and you use it first and then you sell any excess to the utility. And from our internal numbers and our calculations, we see that those systems, as an average Grenadian, would have a payback once you take a loan of $5,000, $5,000 or $6,000. You're paying, and we had discussion with financial institutions, and I can go out on a limb here. If you can pay within $50 and $100 over a period of time, you can have a payback within 6-7 years, etc. So there, that is an interesting opportunity where that bill that you had for $130 on average, what you can do is that from our calculations, you see that that bill will be reduced by 50% based on the system and being able to generate electricity. and then the 50% that you save, you can put that to your loan. But after 5 or 6, 7 years, now you have all of that monies back to yourself, and your electricity bill or the generation in general would be beneficial to all, because the price of electricity that is being given to all customers in Grenada is also dependent on how much renewables goes into the system. And if we have a lower cost of renewables in the long term going in, then the price of electricity for everyone would also be decreased. So I would advise that for a low-income earner, you should be thinking about getting a system that would reduce your electricity bill. You have a small system on your roof, you'd be net metered, and then you'll be able to now reduce your electricity bill.
There isn't much different that I can say. I'll just chime in and say, in that regard, for that specific category, baby steps, because we might not be explicit in the language, but it is implied that there should be a bit of fiscal responsibility. So you stick with first getting the injection of renewables on that small scale, and maybe later, who knows, maybe you can do a partnership with a few other interested investors if you want to get into a small scale IPP type of project. You would need the regulations around that would be a bit stricter. You would be entering into an agreement with the utility to supply. You would have to have land space. So you need to consider all those factors when you considering doing an IPP type project. So the recommendation would definitely be start as a self-generator if you fall into that low income bracket, and after that, then, well, the sky's the limit, but baby steps.
This one comes in the form of a comment, but I'm sure we would love to, and we would provide more clarification on it. This is a new company. What is your makeup? And I'm thinking they're talking about the organizational structure of the commission here.
Thank you very much for the question. So the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission, as mentioned before, is a body corporate that came out from legislation, the 2016 PRC Act. There is a sister act, which is the Electricity Act, which gives us our mandate within the electricity sector. And as mentioned earlier, we can have other public utilities such as water, etc., with the appropriate legislation that can embody this. Now, the PRC, or the PERC as we refer to ourselves, we have a board of commissioners, and we have our chairman, who is Dr. Thomas, and we have a board where there are 4 additional commissioners, and the office of the commission, which is, and I can probably say, is staffed with professional, technically savvy Grenadians. We're all Grenadians, and we're here to serve Grenada and to ensure that we put to you the opportunities that exist, and to make sure that our technical and economic analysis would bear good fruits for everyone. So we have an office in which we have engineers who are all master's level. We have accountants. We have economists. We have our consumer affairs persons here, and we have the supporting staff and myself as the CEO. And we give technical and economic advice to the commission, and the commission, the board of commissioners, would then reflect that to the policymakers. We iterate the process, and we ensure that everything is going in the right direction. So the regulatory body is to make sure that the rules and directives for the sector is in line with the policy objectives. We have the legislations, and the legislation bear fruit to your regulation. The regulations is where you basically spell out, and as we spell out now the self-generator program, this is part of our mandate to ensure that there is more renewables in Grenada. Thank you.
Nisha Paul, you have another question?
Yes, I do. Thank you. As it relates to the legal aspect, I'm not sure if I got it clearly because my internet is going and come. But as it relates to the legal aspects, mention was made that there will be obvious clauses that will have to be adhered to underneath the program or during the 12-month program. Is that speaking to the self-generators, or are we speaking about the PRC? Or can you elaborate on it for me, please? I don't understand it.
Okay, thanks again. So I would have mentioned certain clauses that would need to be complied with. Yes. To get an interconnection, so you would have to be inspected by the electrical inspectorate, and then the utility would also do their due diligence. You might have interest in such a program, but let's imagine for a minute that, well, the structural integrity of your roof is not up to standard. Then, unfortunately, you won't be able to install such a system when it's not certain if the load of that extra weight would be able to stand on such a structure. Where regarding so there would be specific clauses regarding the rights of the utility to disconnect your system. If you don't comply with regular health, safety, and environment standards, then that's a reason to be disconnected. There is an issue that we're also looking at that can become a problem if there is too much interconnection at the same time. So we're speaking about many different small players pumping in intermittent energy, and the impact of all these inverters on the system at the same time. Now, we don't want to create a problem by solving another. So things like frequency imbalance, that could be an issue where there would be clauses then that would specify that in the event of such a thing like that happening, or based on the way your system is installed, if it's causing a problem, then it can be disconnected, because you're looking at the greater good. You also have to protect the integrity of the grid. Another issue could be, well, unintentional islanding. If, for instance, your system is pumping energy into the grid even when the utility has disconnected a particular part of it to do maintenance, that could be dangerous. And so stuff like that there would be an interconnection agreement even for the self-generators, and there would be certain clauses like the ones I just mentioned that would govern the way the interconnection is done and managed. That was what I was getting at.
We have another comment, and it says, are you thinking about the environment?
To answer your question specifically, I mean explicitly, yes. Environmental considerations are key with what we're doing. And you would see that from the fact that we're promoting renewable energy. There are concepts around this that people can make arguments for and against, in terms of the pure circular economy of this, a life cycle analysis. What do you do with the solar panels at the end of life, etc. But the fact that we're looking at harnessing our renewables and our resources around renewables and moving away from fossil fuel, that in itself is a strong consideration for the environment. Part of our mandate also is to ensure that there is environmental legislation that reflects and ties into the current environmental and climate resiliency orientations, that basically spell out what we're doing for the sector when it comes to the batteries, the panels, what do you do at the end of life of the panels, different things. So we are taking a full whole system, the full life cycle analysis of all of these aspects. Thank you.
Another question or comment? There was some mention made about the selling of the excess to Grenlec. Can that be elaborated on a bit more, please?
So in order to explain this, I would like to just do a simple analogy to what we had happening currently before the regulatory body was put into place. What we had, the orientation was that as someone who is going to put a solar panel on their roof or in their lands or have a solar farm, as we refer to, what they did is that any electricity generated, they would have just sell that at an agreed rate that Grenlec would have defined based on the avoided cost of fuel. And what that means is that the cost of fuel today is 31 cents. Cost of fuel, let's say 2 years ago, might have been 50 cents. So the price that Grenlec would have paid you for that renewables is actually pegged to the fuel, which is not a very good thing. So we had what is referred to as a net billing, where you sell everything at that avoided cost of fuel, and any used electricity that you use, your electricity account was given some credit or whatever for this, right? So you sell everything, and then whatever it is that you use, then you pay that bill. Now what we're saying is that this is something that happened before the meter. What we say now is that with the self-generator program, the net metered orientation, meaning that you can use so your panels are now directly connected to the load or to your house, right? So that you can use your electricity in your house first. And for example, like in the daytime, you have a refrigerator running, the sun is shining, is generating electricity. In the previous orientation, you would have sell that electricity to Grenlec first and then buy it back to power your fridge. Now what we're saying is that you can power your refrigerator with that electricity from your panels, and then if there is any excess, let's say your refrigerator was using 1.5 kilowatt hours and you were generating 2, then the 0.5 kilowatt hours you sell at a specified rate, which the commission is setting. Right? So we are the ones responsible for setting that rate, and we would say that that rate being set is not in line with the avoided cost of fuel, because what it does is that it changes, it tries to change the orientation of what we're doing, but we're still benchmarked against what was happening before, which is fuel and the fuel price. Thank you.
Any final questions from the media? In that case, listeners, any closing remarks from the head table?
I'll just like to say that this is going to be something new. It's likened to a bit of an adventure. I'll just recommend that people sign on, and even before we get to the signing on phase, I know that there are a lot of people who are interested, but they don't consider themselves really technical savvy. So you can show your interest by contacting the office. You can speak to any of us, and if you decide that this is the route you want to go down, which putting all the facts on the table it should be, then we are more than willing to lend our assistance and to advise you accordingly.
So I would close with what, in line with what I started the discussion here today with. The PRC has mandated to be the managers of the electricity sector and ensuring that we regulate and make sure the rules and directives are in line with what is needed for the sector and to achieve the policy objectives. We must ensure that we are looking for sustainable, affordable, and secure electricity. And what we're doing here, and part of what we're doing with this program, is to make sure that the enabling environment for the higher penetration of renewables, which would in the long run lead to more affordable electricity prices for all Grenadians, is being been provided. So the self-generated program, the program as an enabler, as an enabling mechanism, would now allow Grenadians to be a part of the sector, to have that local buy-in, or being a part. You're an integral part of what we're doing. And basically, the enabling environment is going to be there, and in the not too distant future, you're going to see lots more benefits, including the price of your electricity will become more affordable, the sustainability of the system would be better endowed, and we're going to move away from sending out all of our foreign exchange to buy in fossil fuel, and we're going to harness all our renewables in Grenada and be able to have sustainable development from our sustainable electricity. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've just heard from our CEO, Dr. George Matthew, and our engineer, Mr. Darrell Bola, on two of the programs which are being rolled out by the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission. They are the Self-Generation Program and the Small-Scale IPP Program. They are both geared at reducing Grenada's carbon footprint as we encourage the increased use of renewable energy. Persons who wish to engage with us, they can come into our office at Queen's Park. Preferably, give us a call at 437-1602. That's 437-1602. You can also send us an email at office@purc.gd. That's office@purc.gd. Before we leave you, on behalf of our commission, which is led by Dr. Spencer Thomas, we would also like to lend a voice of support to our brothers and sisters in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The Commission has taken the decision to garner our resources, and we are going to be sending aid in the form of water and other basic necessities to our brothers and sisters. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. See you next time.
Ministry of Health updating guidelines for persons who are fully vaccinated. Details to this story and more in the National Report. With the details to the news for Tuesday, April 13th, I am Chrisanne Mitchell. The Ministry of Health is currently updating the guidelines for people who have been fully vaccinated and are desirous of coming to Grenada, and this will soon be made available to the public. Chief Medical Officer Dr. Sean Charles says these new guidelines will apply only to people who have been fully vaccinated. A fully vaccinated person is one who has passed the 2-week threshold after receiving the second dose of the vaccine or the WHO-approved single-dose vaccine.
So whatever changes would apply to either persons who are fully vaccinated, and that is, when we say fully vaccinated, we mean at least 2 weeks after you have received your second dose of one of the WHO approved vaccines, or at least 2 weeks after after the approved single dose vaccine. All right. So we have there are several examples of the 2-dose vaccines, such as the AstraZeneca, the Moderna, the Pfizer, and so on. And single-dose vaccine, I believe the only one that we have on the market right now is the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. All right. So a fully vaccinated person is a person who have at least 2 weeks would have passed after they have received their second dose. And of course, so it would be between them and persons who are either unvaccinated or partially vaccinated. So soon the updated guidelines would be released with regards to these two groups.
In Grenada, more than 11,093 people have received their first dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine, and more than 56 have received their second dose. In terms of COVID numbers, the latest information from the Ministry of Health is that Grenada has 2 active cases, all are imports related. COVID-19 has forced the Ministry of Education to find other means of allocating funds to support the facilitation of school cleaners throughout the island. Minister for Education, Human Resource Development, Religious Affairs and Information, Honorable Emlyn Pear, says the ministry had to tap into the school feeding budget to facilitate additional cleaners in schools in the last term. Now they will have to seek funds from other areas to ensure the school feeding program does not suffer as a result.
I believe there are persons who are of this impression that there's so much money is available and that we are not affected financially. And so I needed to make that point to help us to understand that we are in a crisis and finances are not readily available as some persons may think. And so it is a fact that Cabinet had to direct the Ministry of Education to use, you used a more fancy word, repurpose, right? I would use the word juggling for everyone to probably understand what you meant by that, meaning that something was budgeted for X within the capital budget and you moved it over for Y because of the situation, the emergency that you have to deal with, right? And so we will have to further repurpose, Linda. We would have to further look within to see where we can take back something and put over there to ensure that the school feeding program never closed down in this school year.
Vincentians woke up to another explosive eruption of the La Soufrière volcano on Tuesday, which is the 42nd anniversary of the 1979 eruption. The La Soufrière volcano has been erupting effusively since December 2020 and explosively from April 9, 2021. Former NADMA coordinator Sylvain McIntyre, who has been deployed to St. Vincent by SEDIMA to assist with evacuation, says the explosive eruption saw a huge plume of ash disperse into the atmosphere.
What is seeming to be different with this one, though, in some cases it is moving faster and in different direction. There's a swirl effect of it that I am seeing from where I am currently. It means, therefore, that the precipitation or the descending of it is likely to be much quicker than the previous ones we've seen. As a matter of fact, within a few minutes of having observed that one, we have been experiencing the dropping of the ash itself. It is a concern because the airport was indicating its intent to open sooner rather than later. Cleanup activities are in progress, and that will affect aviation tremendously.
The dome of the volcano also collapsed after dozens of explosions followed the April 9th explosive eruption, generating what has been described as devastating pyroclastic flows along the eastern and western coast of St. Vincent on Monday.
It continued into yesterday at different areas and different levels. It is too unsafe now for anyone to venture close to give exact measures in which it came through, but there are cases where it is observed close to shorelines, etc. And what has happened is that coincidentally, around this time on its last eruption, almost a repeat of the activity, and the locations where magma and pyroclastic flow went 1979 and the year before. There are similar patterns. The danger related to the eruption, I think it is a cause for concern. I think people out here who don't really understand, I guess this is the reason for the regular updates.
Over 6,000 residents have been evacuated from the red zones, with 4,000 in shelters and more than 2,000 now staying with relatives and friends. McIntyre says the resulting poor air quality is affecting those with respiratory issues.
Generally, people have been advised to wear particular types of masks. Those of us that are expected to move into particular areas have been outfitted with respirators that is expected to withstand gas to a particular level. We are obviously every time guided by the science, the information provided by the experts. We are taking nothing to chance. We continue to trust the expertise and the instruments that have been providing the warning. But I think one of the hold and the frustration is for the people who might be still trapped, and for the heavy ashfall on some of the buildings and the crops within those areas that we are not able to do the assessment as yet.
It's expected the volcano will continue to spew ash and smoke for some time. This is the National Report. More news after the break. Welcome back. Minister for Education, Human Resource Development, Religious Affairs and Information, Honorable Emlyn Pay, has placed on record Grenada's interest in participating in a regional UNICEF survey which was carried out last week, and Grenada was not chosen as part of the sample group. The survey looks at willingness of students and teachers to return to the classroom. Countries chosen to participate were Anguilla, Antigua and Barbuda, Barbados, Dominica, Montserrat, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Minister Pear says upon finding out of the survey, she instructed the Chief Education Officer to speak with UNICEF officials to find out why Grenada was not represented. As it turns out, the reasons were good.
Only this morning, I actually saw the response from UNICEF explaining why Grenada was not included, and it's probably for good reasons, I would say, but we would still want to do the study, and we did express that we understand why we were not included, but we would still like to do the study for our own benefit. And to explain why we were not included, UNICEF explained the countries that were included were the countries who needed support from UNICEF in preparation of all of their written materials and their posters and their distribution of that through the school system. When they checked Grenada's situation, Grenada had already started distributing, our posters were up, so UNICEF did not need to step in locally to assist us. And the second reason, why Grenada was not included is the fact that when they checked all of the Caribbean countries, Grenada was one of those that already had its protocols established. Principals were already briefed, and students and stakeholders were already briefed and engaged in the development of special protocols for schools. When they examined Grenada's protocol, there was no need to provide assistance. So that survey was conducted among the member states where UNICEF had to step in and provide support to the ministries of education.
Even so, the education minister made a request to UNICEF for the survey to be conducted here. She says it will be beneficial to Grenada.
Even if we probably will advance in stage of implementation, we still would like to have that survey done, and so we await the response of UNICEF as to whether the instrument would be made available to Grenada.
And finally in the news, the Grenada Cooperative Nutmeg Association has joined with other organizations and individuals who have answered the call for assistance to the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines who continue to face the threat of eruption from the La Soufrière volcano. Since the eruption of the volcano on April 9th, the island has been covered with ash and is now dealing with pyroclastic flow. As a result of this, many people have been displaced and are in need of basic supplies, the most important being water. Chairman Leo Cato says through the National Disaster Management Agency, the GCNA will donate 340 cases of water to St. Vincent.
The water contribution came basically from the staff and management of the GCNA, farmers, and the board of directors. And as chair of the board, I am happy that our farmers and our staff could respond to a sister isle that has its own challenges. We have had ours, and they did come to our rescue. And it's only a blessing on our part today to be able to make our own contribution to SBG.
Cato says more assistance is forthcoming for the people of St. Vincent.
There are farmers who are still bringing water and contribution together. But knowing the urgency in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we have decided that we are going to ship those 340 cases of water in the first instance. And when others come in, we will make the other donation in the very, very near future. So I'm delighted to make that donation to the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines on behalf of the nutmeg farmers and staff of the GCNA.
That brings us to the end of the National Report for Tuesday, April 13th, 2021. On behalf of the entire news and production team here at the Government Information Service, I am Chris-Ann Mitchell. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, these are your government notices for today, Wednesday, April 14th, 2021. I am Caroline Peters. The Ministry of Sports, Culture and the Arts, Fisheries and Cooperatives will launch a 13-week program in audio engineering for students at the newly constructed studio facility at MacDonald College. Students will be introduced to the facility and presented with a program outline along with a demonstration of equipment and operations. The program will run until July 9th, 2021. The ministry will also launch its newly produced online teaching aid program for the performing arts. The program was developed by tutors within the Division of Culture and the Arts and is intended to provide existing students and beginners with a platform to develop skills needed in music and dance. The program will be broadcasted weekly for students and the general public. Under the 9th program cycle of the BNTF, the Ministry of Health, together with the St. Mark's Women Welfare Group, spearheaded the successful refurbishment of the Victoria Dome Street toilet and bathroom facility. The refurbished facility guarantees better health and more convenience for 405 beneficiaries, with improved access to quality water supply and sanitation services. In addition to being a boon for the whole community, during the period of infrastructural work, the sub-project was a source of employment for 8 males and 1 female. The Ministry of Infrastructure Development, Public Utilities, Transport and Implementation has commenced work on the Mount Rush Road. In that regard, the Mount Rush Road is closed to facilitate construction of approximately 900 feet of reinforced concrete pavement. The work is planned for 10 weeks. The ministry apologizes for any inconvenience and anticipates the cooperation of residents of the area and the general public. And now for your government reminder. The Ministry of Health is advising the general public of its fogging schedule for this week. Today, Wednesday, April 14th, Bonaire at 4 p.m. On Thursday, Town of Victoria at 4 p.m. The Ministry of Health is asking homeowners to open their houses so that fog can get inside and kill adult mosquitoes. These have been your government notices for today, Wednesday, April 14th, 2021. I am Carleen Peters. Until next time.